So now that we're well past WWE Money in the Bank and we've got our sights set on WWE SummerSlam, I thought it'd be fun once again to find out who is going to dethrone each current WWE champion. First up, let's take a look at my work so far. Let's see how good I am at predicting these things, because we've had a couple of title changes since the last time I did this video about 3 or 4 weeks ago. First up, over on Raw, the World Tag Team Titles held by Miz and R-Truth, the Awesome Truth. I thought the Bad Creeds would get their shit together in time to take those titles off of Awesome Truth. I was wrong, because shortly after I did that video, the Judgment Day got their hands on those titles. However, according to my predictions, that might not be the only titles they get their hands on. We'll get to that here in a second. I predicted Finn Balor would be Mr. Money in the Bank. He didn't even make it into the match. It ended up being Drew McIntyre, which was my original pick. Like, I don't know, back when I did the original Money in the Bank predictions video, I was kind of all over the map with those particular picks. However, I did get 3 title changes correct. Number one, it's not really a title change, but I predicted Tiffany Stratton would be winning the women's Money in the Bank. Got that one right. I also predicted in that last video that Ethan Page would be defeating Trick Williams for that title. I said either at Heat Wave or in a one-on-one contest. It happened at Heat Wave. I got that one right. Also, this one was kind of obvious. DIY did in fact beat A-Town down to get those SmackDown WWE Tag Championships. I think that's what they call them. It's not SmackDown. It happened on SmackDown. And they even got a rematch and they couldn't win them back. So that leaves us with a bunch of open options for who's going to take those titles. Also, we've seen a little bit more of the landscape heading into SummerSlam and how it may all play out. There's still a lot of moving pieces at play here, so hopefully I'll get a couple of these right. Let's go ahead and dive right into it right now. The World Heavyweight Championship, Damian Priest versus Gunther. That match should be an absolute banger at SummerSlam. However, my prediction is not that Gunther's going to win at SummerSlam. Right now, I think Damian Priest, to establish himself as the man on Monday Night Raw, is going to retain over Gunther. So then you're asking, hey, Steve, who's going to beat Damian Priest? My answer, Finn Balor, the guy that I thought was going to win Money in the Bank. Listen to me, people. Triple H loves him some Judgment Day. He loves him some factional civil war. I feel like Liv Morgan is going to not only beat Rhea Ripley at SummerSlam, she's going to help Finn Balor beat Damian Priest at Bad Blood come October. If this one comes true, then I'm going to take several victory laps here at the channel, because I'm even going to tell you guys where these title changes are going to happen. So Finn Balor beats Damian Priest for the world title, and then you got this bad Judgment Day faction with Finn and Liv Morgan as the world champions there on Raw. Finn Balor just signed a new 5-year deal. Part of that deal is he beats Damian Priest at Bad Blood. Let's move on. WWE champion Cody Rhodes, throw your L's up for the final boss, because The Rock is going to beat him at WrestleMania 41 to up the stakes, man. Cody's got to get back on the chase. He finished his story. Now he's got to chase. Next up, let's talk about the Women's World Heavyweight Champion, Liv Morgan. A lot of people think Rhea Ripley's going to beat her at SummerSlam. Nah, she's not going to beat her there. Rhea Ripley is in fact going to win the Royal Rumble and beat Liv Morgan at WrestleMania 41. That's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to give this a longer story. I think Rhea Ripley's going to have to chase again for that title. I don't think they're just going to do the thing there at SummerSlam. Could be totally wrong about that. And maybe at the end of SummerSlam, we'll have Rhea Ripley with the title and Damian Priest without the title. But right now, I'm sticking with this. Next up, WWE Women's Champion Bayley. I stand by my pick in the previous video. Tiffany Stratton is going to cash in on Bayley after Nia Jax basically destroys her, but Bayley walks away with like a desperate roll-up type win over Nia Jax. But Nia Jax going to beat her up after the match, and that's going to leave her prone to an attack from Tiffany Stratton. Tiffany Stratton will then get the title off of Bayley, and then she'll have to be walking around like, oh my God, I pissed off Bayley. I pissed off a lot of people, and I pissed off Nia Jax. She's not my friend anymore. So she's going to have to turn into one of those cheaty heels and going to have to cheat her way through a bunch of title wins. Next up, we got Sami Zayn. So he just beat Braun Breaker clean off of one haluva kick. And now it looks like, so him and Ilya Dragunov have a match on Raw tonight. Something tells me Braun Breaker's going to come in and wonk that finish. I get the feeling that's leading to a SummerSlam match. Triple threat, Sami Zayn, Ilya Dragunov, Braun Breaker. And I feel like Ilya Dragunov is going to win that title off of Sami Zayn, but it's not going to happen at SummerSlam. It's going to happen at Bash in Berlin. Obviously, he's from Russia, but he had a lot of history there in Berlin, in Germany, with WXW and Gunther Walter at the time. So I get the feeling that Ilya Dragunov might actually best Sami Zayn in a one-on-one matchup there in Berlin. And then him and Braun Breaker can restart that NXT feud fresh again, even though they're still feuding right now. Whatever. Ilya Dragunov is going to beat Sami Zayn, and I think it's going to be a hell of a match. Logan Paul in the U.S. title. He's defended it like, what, twice in 250 days or whatever the stat is. Yeah, he's got to drop that title, and I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen at SummerSlam, and I think it's going to happen to LA Knight. He's already signed the contract. Logan Paul's going to end up signing it too, and LA Knight's going to beat Logan Paul for his first singles win on main roster, his first singles title, I should say, on main roster. Seems kind of inevitable. It just seems like, look, I understand Logan Paul, his prime drink is like a big sponsor of WWE, and he wears that title out and about. But at some point, you got to have the guy around who's got the title. So I think that's going to be LA Knight. I think the fans will really like that too. Next up, the WWE Women's Tag Championships. Unholy Union have them right now. Bianca and Jade have declared that they're going to go after those tag titles once again. However, I'm going out on a little bit of a limb here. I think it's going to be a second before they get them back, because I think the Unholy Union are good guys. Bianca and Jade are good guys. And therefore, I think there's going to be somebody in between them before Bianca and Jade get their hands back on those titles. And I think that team is going to be Damage Control. Wouldn't shock me to see Julia show up in NXT for a very, very short period of time. She might bypass NXT altogether now that another high-profile woman signing has taken place in WWE and Stephanie Vacour. I think she might take that spot instead, getting that title off Roxanne Perez. That's a spoiler for later on. And Julia might go straight to Damage Control. Maybe they'll kick out Dakota Kai or something like that. And then you'll have Io Sky and Julia going after those tag titles and getting them so that they eventually can drop them to Jade and Bianca, who will get those titles back, but not anytime soon. I think at SummerSlam, it's going to be Damage Control getting those titles back. Next up, the WWE Tag Championships over on SmackDown. We've got DIY with them. It is so soon. They are going to have these titles for a while. And off the top of my head, I can't take any sort of educated guess because of that. I'm going to say Bad Bloodline gets those hands on those titles. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga are going to be the next WWE Tag Champions. They'll take them off DIY. You saw what Jacob Fatu did to like all four members of that tag match last Friday. Absolutely annihilated them. Bad Bloodline needs some amount of gold. I'm going to say that's going to happen at, I don't know, on an episode of SmackDown in August sometime, maybe September, a September episode of SmackDown. That's when it's going to happen. Oh my God, let's move on. The World Tag Titles over on Raw. Judgment Day has them right now. Who's going to beat Judgment Day? I don't know, the Creeds? At some point, the Creeds are going to win those tag titles. Judgment Day is going to have them for a while because I think Finn Balor, they're going to do the I have all the gold thing with Finn Balor. And so, yeah, I think him and JD are going to have those for a while. Maybe they'll even do a thing where once Finn wins the world title, he'll just give his tag title over to Dominic, and it'll be Dominic and JD. And then the Creeds will get those titles off of whatchamacallit. Maybe, you know what? Maybe the Wyatt Six. No, I'm gonna stick with the Creeds. All right, before we move on to NXT, let's talk the Royal Rumble For the men's Royal Rumble match, I've got a guy who's gone far a couple times. He was down to the last two years ago. I'm going to say Gunther wins the men's Royal Rumble in January, goes on to fight for the world title in April at WrestleMania. And for the women's Royal Rumble, I'm going to say, I already mentioned this, Rhea Ripley wins, and then she'll take on Liv Morgan at WrestleMania 41. All right, let's talk NXT right now. The NXT World Champion is Ethan Page. My guess on this one is that on the first episode of the CW NXT, we're going to get Trick Williams versus Ethan Page as the main event. And in that episode, Trick Williams will become a two-time NXT World Champion. Let's move on to the NXT Women's Champion, Roxanne Perez. Now, last time I said I thought Sol Ruca was going to beat Roxanne Perez. I don't think that's the case. This is what I think they're doing because they've got two potentially big signees coming in. They got Julia, who I still think is probably going to go to main roster, and they got Stephanie Vacour. They've also got Delta, a relatively well-known name in Australia, coming to their women's division as well. And so I kind of feel like that world title that's held by Roxanne Perez is going to be for kind of like the main roster-ready stars. Jordynne Grace also might end up signing with NXT. And if that's the case, you're going to have on top of Roxanne Perez, at least like potentially 3 or 4 names that could be that NXT Women's World Champion. The North American Championship, I think, is going to be kind of reserved for that like in-house NXT homegrown women's division stars. Names like Sol Ruca, names like Ariana Grace, names like Jada Parker. I think the world title is going to be more for signings they bring in with a little bit more experience who they're coming in, kind of like they did with Ethan Page. So I think the person that's going to take that NXT women's title off of Roxanne Perez is going to be Stephanie Vacour. That's my pick. Let's talk about the NXT North American Women's Champion. That's currently Kalani Jordan. Like I just said, I feel like they're going to stick with homegrown NXT talent for that. And for that, I think it's going to be Jada Parker. I think that she had a really phenomenal last woman standing match against Mia Yim. She's really proven that she is the real deal. I could see her, and she's kind of a next level bad guy, so I could see her taking that title off Kalani Jordan. All right, let's move on to the NXT Tag Division. Nathan Frazier and Axiom. Who are they going to lose their titles to? I don't know. I think last time I said OTM. I'm going to stick with OTM. I think they're going to go ahead and take those titles off of Nathan Frazier and Axiom, largely because not a whole, it's going to be Hank and Frank, Tank, whatever their names are. I don't think it's going to be them. So yeah, out the mud. All right, let's talk about the NXT North American Championship, Obafemi. Last time I talked about Obafemi, I said nobody's going to beat him for that North American title. I stand by that. I think he's going to vacate that title as opposed to anybody beating him for it. And at that point, I don't know, maybe Wesley will get it back. Who knows? And finally, as always, let's talk about the Heritage Cup currently held by Tony D. I don't think it's going to be Joe Hendry that gets that title off him anymore because I think Joe Hendry is going to be the TNA champion coming up at, Slammiversary they got coming up. So it's got to be somebody different. It's not going to be Nathan Frazier, although he brought him to a pretty decent Heritage Cup rules match. I'm going to say it goes maybe back to Charlie Dempsey. Or Oro Mensa. Oro Mensa is a good name. I'm going to go with Oro Mensa. It's just a really fun name to say. Anyways, let me know who you guys are going to dethrone whom in the comments below. Do me a solid. Hit that thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button, the notify bell. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you around.